Chuck, I lost my wife to a battle of pancreatic cancer, and that was 5 years ago. And last fall, my daughter and her husband came over and announced that they were having our first family grandchild. And obviously, I was so happy for them. But after they left, I realized that my wife will never have never know or experience our grandchild.
Hey, folks, thanks for joining me today. You heard it at the very beginning. This is about cancer. This is about loss. This is about grieving. But more so, it's about how do you deal with that loss during the first holiday season when they're not there? Do you continue with tradition? Do you start something new? How do you get around that? How do you talk to your child, your grandchild, who was not born when you lost that or they lost that significant person? What do you do? That's what we're going to talk about with Ken Rolfe. And he has written a book called Christmas Sun. That's Christmas Sun, S-U-N. So if you listen to the podcast, you're going to understand where that name came from for the title of his book. So I hope you sit back and listen to this, because this is something that's really, really important. So please sit back and listen or watch the podcast. And please remember, if you're a pet owner, please be responsible and have your pets spayed or neutered. Thanks.
Welcome to Amazing People, Amazing Things with your host, Chuck.
Right off the bat, they could go to your website, kenrolfbooks.com. So it's KENROHLF books, all one word.com. And the reason I'm mentioning that is you've got what I would call a very important book, and it's kind of geared towards kids. And before we really get into what the book is about, I want to ask you, why is it a kid's book? And excuse me if I keep on calling it a kid's book, but it's called Christmas Sun. Is it a book for kids, and why a book for kids?
Yeah, so I think the way I would answer that is it's not necessarily a book for kids. I think that it could be read by an adult, but the backstory on the book is Chuck, I lost my wife to a battle of pancreatic cancer, and that was 5 years ago. And last fall, my daughter and her husband came over and announced that they were having our first family grandchild, and obviously I was so happy for them. But after they left, I realized that my wife will never have never know or experience our grandchild. And so the book really is designed to as an effort to explain to our grandchild or a grandchild the loss of a parent or a grandparent that maybe they have never met. And so that's kind of the backstory of the book. And so, is it a children's book? Well, yeah, it certainly can be used to explain to children about, the grandmother they never met, but it also can be used, as part of your holiday decorating ceremony to kind of reflect on a lost loved ones and so forth.
Yeah, and speaking of your loss, like I said, of all days to lose a loved one, a spouse, Christmas Day, it's supposed to be the most joyful day, a celebration of sorts on that day, and you lost the greatest celebration that you had.
Yeah.
Can I ask?
Go ahead.
I was going to ask. Can I ask how you dealt with it, how you got through with it? And like I said, it's only been 5 years, and I would imagine it's still a loss and a grieving process for you.
I think that she became ill in October. So between October and Christmas Day, both me and I have two children, our family, we were just being caregivers during that period. So I don't know that there was, our first Christmas, Chuck, really was the following Christmas. Because, our first holiday season, if you will, was the following Christmas. And how did we deal with maybe the following Christmas? We talked about what it was that, we wanted our holidays to look like. I say kind of everybody wants a cookie cutter solution, Chuck, but we're not cookies,
Yeah.
There's no one way to grieve, and then there's that's particularly true around the holidays. And so we tried to get together and talk about, what they wanted to see out of the holidays, what I wanted to see out of the holidays, and really, try to come up with a family plan. Did we want to go to our relative's house, or would that be too tough, or did we want to decorate like we always used to, or did we want to change that up? So just all kinds of different discussions, and then we try to settle upon, what we wanted as our family plan for the holidays. But that's what we used to try to get through. And I'll say this to your audience, Chuck. First, I'm not a healthcare professional or a grief counselor. I'm just a person who's done a lot of research on this, and I've lived it. And so I want to make sure that your audience knows that. So, if your listeners and their children may have unique needs that may need professional advice, they should certainly seek that. But one of the things that, I really held on to is not letting. First of all, everybody has an opinion, right? But not
Yes.
letting others' opinions on what you should or should not be doing, affect you. This is after you've experienced the loss of someone special. It's for you to figure out and for you to make a decision. And really, although people have opinions, it's what's best for what you think is best for you.
Yeah.
And be easy on yourself, make a decision, try it out. If it worked, that's awesome. If it doesn't work, well, it didn't work. But be easy on yourself and allow yourself forgiveness and go at it again.
Two things. I want to say thanks for adding that, you are a regular dad, a regular guy, not a healthcare professional. I think because that lets people know, hey, he's not coming from this point where it says here are the clinical studies on behavior and things like that. So that's a thank you to you on that. And second release, thank you for putting together this book. And I would imagine it was difficult to write, but therapeutic as well. Is it written with big words or smaller words for like if parents are reading it to their children, or if a child, a teenager picks up and read it, is it easy enough to read?
Oh yeah, I think it's I guess my vision for it, Chuck, is that maybe me, Grandpa, sitting with my now 5-year-old grandson on my lap, and we read the story about Grandma. So it's very it's not big words, and it's there's some repetition. Children like repetition, and so it's very easy to read. Although, like I say, I have gotten comments back from adults. A couple things. One is it really hits home with them if they've experienced this as well. And the strangest comment is people will say, the second and third time that I read it, I even got more out of the book than I did the first time I read it. So very encouraged by that, Chuck. So that's nice. But it's meant for ages 4 to 8 is kind of what we have designed, I think. But
Okay.
I think fits across the board.
Okay. Once again, I just want to remind folks that this it's called Christmas Sun, and it's about correct me if I'm wrong too on this. It's about remembering a loss, and the story is about loss of a grandpa, and it's going through your first holiday, right?
It's yeah, so it's exactly right. It's remembering the loss of a loved one, and it's the loss of a grandma,
Oh,
grandmother.
grandma on this
Yes,
one. Sorry.
and so kind of the premise of the story is, uh, my wife, who's the grandma. It's a polar bear story, and my wife, who was the grandmother who was lost, leaves behind a note for Little Bear as they talk through, and she kind of Little Bear says, "Grandma, who's Grandma?" She doesn't never or he never met Grandma. So there's this note from Grandma that explains a little bit about who she is, and then also she leaves behind a Christmas ornament for Little Bear with her note, and asks Little Bear to, decorate the Christmas tree by placement of this ornament on the tree in her honor. And the hope of that, Chuck, is that, again, I view this as maybe like a Christmas box book. You put it in with your ornaments and whatnot, your tree, and each year you could bring it out, you read the book, you place the ornament on the tree, but it serves as a way for folks to share stories about our lost loved ones and remember them and talk about them. That's really it's a prompt for that. I heard a great quote the other day. I'll try to share it without breaking up, but the we all die twice. First is the physical time that our body stops working, and the second time is the last time our name is mentioned. And I really, when I heard that, it's exactly what my book is designed for, and that is to keep remembering people, keep mentioning them, keep telling stories about them, so people who come after them can remember who they are.
Yeah, I think the lineage like that is important, and even though somebody's physically passed, I believe that they're definitely still here as long as you remember them and you talk about them and you share the stories. And this is why I like. This may sound bad, but this is why I like this topic, because I want people to be able to understand and know that you may have lost them physically, but if you remember them and you share their stories, they're still living. They're still alive in some one way or another, some fashion, some form they are.
Absolutely, absolutely, and they are around us all the time. They show up in different ways. They influence what we do by hearing, thinking about what it is they would do to handle a certain situation. And yeah, they're with us. They're around us all the time. I totally
Yeah.
agree.
Uh, I know this might be a little bit parallel sidetrack from what we're talking about, but just listening to you talk about this, it makes me think that if I am a parent or a loved uncle or an aunt or whatever it might be, and I am, I've been diagnosed with something, but I have, again, if I'm a parent or something like that, it makes me think that I should make an ornament, make a some sort of a diary or a video to say, "Hi, I'm your grandma," or "I'm your mom, and I know that I might be gone physically, but I'm here with you." Something like that. Do you think that might be a good idea to do?
Yeah, so I just went actually to a grief conference, and they opened the conference up with it was like almost like a documentary of a woman who went through where she was diagnosed with a terminal disease, and she went through that, and with the audience. And one of the things that she did do is I'll just call it like maybe half a dozen, let's say, famous books, Good Night Moon, those ones that we all have read to our children. and she did a taping of her reading those books to grandchildren that she had not been yet born. And we did not do that. I know that my wife did a fair amount of writing. In fact, going back to they're always around us. Last week, my daughter texted me a picture, and it was from a journal that my wife had written, and she said, "I just found this, never saw it before." It was in a book that my daughter pulled out, and here was this writing from my wife. So similar to reading the story or whatever, but I think for us, it's been important to read those things. Just the memories and her thoughts and beliefs on things, but it's very powerful. I think it's a good idea. I agree.
Yeah,
It moves you to tears, Chuck, but you know what? Yeah, getting moved to tears it's not a bad thing. It just shows how much you love the person that you lost.
yeah. You're absolutely right. It's okay to cry. Boys, girls, men, women. It's an emotion that we all have, and like I said, it's much better to let that out rather than to hold it in.
I agree.
It's part of the grieving process, I think.
Absolutely.
Now, Ken, if there is a takeaway for the audience, what I know there's more than one thing, but what is the one thing that you would say to the audience on how to get through that first holiday?
Well, I'll try to be quick, but there's really, a lot to think about. Are you going to send out cards or newsletters? Are you going to go to your faith service? Are you going to visit the cemetery? Are you going to do it alone? Are you going to do it as a family? Are you going to have the same foods you've always had and those things? So there's a lot going on that are, really serve as triggers to processing grief and emotion, So I really believe it's important if a family can get together and talk about those types of things. What do you want to see? Do you want to go to, Uncle Bob's, and then your child might say, I don't want to go to Uncle Bob's. It's just going to be too sad for me to be there, or whatever. And try to come up with a real, thoughtful plan that can, at your best, at least try to accommodate everybody's, needs and what their desires are for that holiday season. It's very emotion packed, as you might know.
Yeah, and as you've said, it's everybody grieves different. Everybody's process is different. Everybody's timing is different. Do you carry on with your traditions for the holiday? Do you make adjustments? Do you skip one? There's so much to be thought out. And like you said, for you were a caregiver, and
Yes.
you and your kids, you were going through that first holiday,
Yes.
caring, but it was a year later, and
And we did, right or wrong again, I don't, what we did decide to do, we rotate our Christmas between me and my two sisters. It happened to be the year that we were supposed to host, and we did do it. So we carried on with that tradition of having our whole entire family over, as we always would have. Now, I'm not saying everyone should do that at all. That's just what we decided to do, and it worked out fine. It was really, it was a nice evening, and we obviously honored Sherri, and, we do an annual toast where we talked about her as well, and all that sort of stuff. But, since that time, we've kind of made some adjustments. We now, Chuck, we as a family are kind of real nuclear family. So my daughter, her husband, son, significant other, me and my significant other, we go away to our cabin like 2 weeks ahead of Christmas. So Christmas obviously for us is a melancholy day, and so we kind of celebrate our Christmas a couple of weeks ahead of that, and so that we can kind of have that, the joy of the holidays, and not think about Christmas, so be it, and we found that that's really been a nice tradition for us, to go up there and get away as a group, and then enjoy that time together. So we do that, right or wrong. That's what we do.
Yeah, and again, as you said, it's whether you stick with the same traditions that you always had prior to the loss of a loved one, or you make new ones. There's no right or wrong on this.
I agree.
So, it's once again, I just want to remind folks, KenRolfBooks.com, and it's KenRohlf books.com, and as you mentioned that it's written for 4 to 8 year old, but even an adult who's reading it or reads it to a child, they're going to get something out of this. So
absolutely, and you can also find it just on Amazon under Christmas Sun, S-U-N. And it's not a religiously bent book. It's the title comes from Christmas, the day that my wife passed, and she was a lover of watching sunsets, and so that's how we get the name Christmas Sun. So, but yeah, you can find it on Amazon as well, and so far so good.
Ken, hope this is not too personal and too silly, but how are you doing today?
You mentioned it earlier. I think that I was so into the caregiving that, after, even a good stretch of time, I don't think I realized all of what had happened, and so I do think, as you mentioned, writing this book and uncovering the emotions that, went with that time has really been good and therapeutic for me. And I've always, again, right or wrong, I've always been thankful for the time that my wife and I were able to spend together. We were married for 28 years, have 2 children, as I mentioned, and so I never, went through the stage of anger and all that sort of stuff. I just tried to focus on being thankful for the time that we were able to spend together. That's kind of who I am, and it kind of seemed to be good for that situation. And but going through this book writing process has been very cathartic, and has been a great thing for me. So, and I'm doing good, Chuck. Thank you for asking.
Good. Yeah. And I'm sorry if I'm extending all this, but I would imagine too that there are triggers that make you think. And the reason I bring this up is we talked about memories and thinking about the person, and that keeps them alive. And I think oftentimes people look at triggers that make them think about the person as something bad because it makes them sad. But to me, those triggers are the memories, and they're still alive because something out there is they're keeping them alive.
Yes. If I can share a story. So, well, it's a little over a year ago. We kind of sold the family house that, kids were raised in and whatnot, and moved. And in preparing it for the new buyer or whatever, we cleaned up a storm. That thing was spotless. And as I walked out the last time, I went through the living room, and there was a dime. We had vacuumed the living room 10 times, Chuck, but there was a dime in the living room floor. And I don't know if you know the significance of dimes. That's, dimes and cardinals is kind of the, that your lost loved one is looking out for. If you find a dime, that's our thing anyway. If you find a dime, then they're near you, you know. And lo and behold, as we walked out the door, here was right in the center of the room too. It wasn't like it was tucked in the corner where we would have missed it with a vacuum, you know. And so that was just an amazing thing to know that, you know, she was part of that move and there with us. It was amazing.
Wow. Keep your eyes and ears open for things like that are suddenly there. It's a
And I think
could be.
you're right too on the, you know, when you do see those things that are triggers and memories, it, you know, the fact that it brings emotion to you, that's okay. That's good. That means that this person touched you and impacted your life. And the
Yes.
fact that you're thinking about them and you feel that loss within you, that's okay. In fact, I would advocate it's better than if you don't have feelings, you know. I mean, then you know that that person was someone special.
Yeah. Um, Ken, I just want to say thank you very much again for sharing your thoughts and your feelings, and also for writing this book and sharing with us uh, your book. So,
Well, thank you
once
for
again, I'm
having
just
me,
going to.
Chuck. It's been a pleasure. You do a terrific job, and it's been nice to be a guest on your show. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you.